There is a 26-minute phone call sitting in Ashley Perez's possession. On that recording, Phil Mickelson apologizes. She recorded it, she kept it for years, and in June 2026, she allowed a journalist named Alan Shipnuck to listen to it. What that call corroborates, and what happened in the days after it became public, pulled the name of Amy Mickelson into the center of the biggest scandal in modern golf for the first time in 30 years. A woman who built her entire public life on silence suddenly found herself named in a statement that acknowledged her husband's failures in writing. To understand how the sport arrived at this moment, you have to understand the image that came before it, because the fall only makes sense when you measure the height it started from. Phil Mickelson and Amy Mickelson were married in 1996, back when he was still chasing his first major championship. Together they raised 3 children, Evan, Sophia, and Amanda. For most of his career, the family was not a footnote to the golf. It was the brand itself. That brand was forged in 2009 when Amy was diagnosed with breast cancer and Phil stepped away from the tour to be at her side through treatment. That single decision defined him in the public eye more than any trophy. While Tiger Woods was unraveling in scandal during that same era, Phil Mickelson was cast as the opposite, the one who got his priorities right. The trophies came too. 6 major championships in total. The 2013 Open Championship at Muirfield, the victory he has repeatedly called the most fulfilling of his career, ended with him turning from the 18th green directly into the arms of Amy and their 3 children. Then came the 2021 Professional Golfers Association Championship, where at age 50 he became the oldest major champion in the history of the sport. That was the Ursum. That was the image. And according to the reporting that surfaced in 2026, the first serious crack in that image had already formed more than a decade earlier. The crack traces back to the 2015 Barclays Championship in the New York area. According to Ashley Perez, who was then married to professional golfer Pat Perez, Phil Mickelson invited the couple to stay at his villa at Liberty National Golf Club during the tournament. One evening, she says, the 3 of them were drinking wine together when Pat Perez stepped away to use the restroom. In those few minutes, Ashley Perez alleges, Phil Mickelson took out his phone and showed her a full-body nude photograph of himself. Then, she says, came the proposition. According to her account published by Skratch, he told her, "When Pat falls asleep, I want you to come see me," after saying he would leave his bedroom door open that night. She declined. She also said nothing when her husband returned to the table, and her explanation for that silence is one of the most human details in the entire story. Pat Perez still had to compete in the tournament, and the 2 couples were staying next door to each other. She did not want the situation to explode mid-event. She waited until the tournament ended, and then she told her husband everything. Pat Perez did not confront Phil Mickelson directly at the time, but the story traveled through professional golf circles for years. Then in 2022, Pat Perez appeared on a podcast hosted by golf instructor Claude Harmon and said something that made no sense to listeners at the time and makes complete sense now. He said Phil Mickelson had crossed the line with me that is just uncrossable and unforgivable. He refused to tell the story. He simply confirmed that Mickelson had apologized for it and that he could not forgive him. 4 years later, the Skratch investigation supplied the missing context, and it supplied something else as well. Corroboration. Ashley Perez had recorded a 26-minute telephone call in which Phil Mickelson apologized, and she allowed Alan Shipnuck to listen to that recording before publication. That detail matters because it moved the allegation beyond one person's memory. Mickelson's representatives later pushed back on how the photograph was characterized, saying that during the apology call he challenged the description by asking whether the image was topless, and they argued that his willingness to apologize should not be treated as an admission of every allegation made against him. But there is one more reason the Ashley Perez account carries weight that the other allegations do not. She is the first accuser to attach her real name to her story on the record. In investigative journalism, that distinction changes everything because a named source accepts public scrutiny and legal exposure that an anonymous source never faces. The Barclays allegation, however, was only one thread. The other thread involves 3 of the most exclusive golf clubs in Southern California. and it began unspooling on June 11, 2026, when Golf Digest reported that Phil Mickelson was no longer a member at the Farms Golf Club outside San Diego. According to that report, a female club employee accused him of non-consensual and inappropriate physical contact before a round of golf earlier in the spring. The employee reported the incident to her supervisors. The club opened an investigation, and officials located Mickelson while he was still on the course. He was confronted mid-round and left the property without finishing. The club later issued a statement confirming that a staff member had reported member misconduct, that an independent investigation was conducted, and that the individual in question was no longer a member. A spokesperson for Mickelson responded that any misunderstanding has been cleared up, and after publication, his representatives confirmed that he had resigned. Then came the Skratch reporting on two earlier departures. At the Madison Club in La Quinta, California, where Mickelson exited in 2021, a senior member of the club's management team told Alan Shipnuck that the departure was less an expulsion and more a demand from Amy Mickelson herself, describing a call from the couple's wealth management firm instructing that Phil's property be sold immediately and his membership ended. The report connected that exit to an allegation that a woman who was not his wife had been staying overnight at his condominium. And at the Bridges in Rancho Santa Fe, club members described something stranger. According to that account, Phil Mickelson would hand his phone to a young employee in the pro shop and pay him $500 to drive it around the course for 3 or 4 hours, so that the location tracking feature his family used would show him on the golf course when he was somewhere else entirely. Mickelson's representatives rejected all of it. In a statement, they said he has never been expelled from a golf club, that his membership has never been revoked anywhere, and that every departure was his own decision. They also called the suggestion that Amy Mickelson orchestrated any club exit false, and said the family's use of the location sharing feature was an ordinary tool used by millions of households, not evidence of anything sinister. All of these threads converged on June 26, 2026, the day Alan Shipnuck published his full investigation on Skratch. The piece drew on interviews with 19 sources, and Shipnuck stated publicly that it went through vetting by 2 top media attorneys and a professional fact-checker. Beyond the Barclays incident and the club departures, the report described a dinner at which Mickelson allegedly steered the conversation into dark and graphic sexual territory in front of other guests, with Ashley Perez recalling that the conversation kept going there because he kept taking it there. One quote from the report cut deeper than the rest. A person described as a friend of Mickelson told Shipnuck he thought he was bulletproof and said he had ultimately been consumed by his own darkness. Ashley Perez explained her decision to go public in plain terms, telling the outlet that a culture of silence keeps women from coming forward and that she wanted to give others the courage to share their truth. Days later, on her Instagram account, she wrote that she would stand next to the millions of women who have been silenced. What followed was a war of statements, and this is where Amy Mickelson's name entered the story. On June 29, 2026, a spokeswoman for Phil Mickelson, Jennifer Connolly, released a statement to the press. It is important to be precise here, because this statement came from Phil Mickelson's team, not from Amy directly, yet it placed her at the very center of the narrative. The statement acknowledged that some circulating allegations revisit mistakes he has already acknowledged, publicly or privately. Sit with that phrase for a moment, because it is a written concession that acknowledged mistakes exist, delivered by his own representatives. The statement then invoked his wife by name, saying that across their 35-year relationship, Amy Mickelson has supported him with extraordinary grace and unwavering love. And it framed the moment with 4 words that traveled around the golf world within hours: recovery is not a straight line. Then the tone hardened. On July 2, Mickelson's representatives escalated, calling Shipnuck's article an anonymously sourced drive by shooting and arguing that Skratch should have disclosed its corporate history with the Professional Golfers Association Tour, given that Mickelson is one of the most prominent players ever to leave that tour for LIV Golf. Skratch's editor-in-chief, Ben Boscovich, rejected the attacks, said the publication stands by its reporting. and noted that Mickelson, his wife, and his attorney were all offered the chance to comment 3 days before publication. And then Ashley Perez's attorney, Daniel Watkins, added a line that sounded unmistakably like a warning. He said the evidence of Mickelson's misconduct is overwhelming and undeniable, and that it would speak loudly and decisively at the appropriate time. Behind the public battle sits a private reality that deserves careful handling. Phil Mickelson has been almost entirely absent from professional golf in 2026, and the stated reason has been a family health matter. According to Shipnuck's reporting, the person who has been unwell is one of the Mickelson children, not Phil and not Amy. That means this family has been navigating a genuine medical crisis at the exact moment its private life was being dismantled in public. The competitive timeline tells its own story. Mickelson missed the first 4 live golf events of the season, returned once in March to finish tied for 48th in South Africa, then withdrew from the Masters tournament, the Professional Golfers Association Championship, and the United States Open. Finally came the Open Championship at Royal Birkdale. According to reporting from The Telegraph, his withdrawal from that event was decided around June 18 before the Skratch investigation was even published. The result is historic in the worst way. 2026 is the first year since 1990 that Phil Mickelson will miss all 4 major championships, and the tournament he is skipping last is the one he loved most. The man who once posted constantly on social media has gone completely silent, with his last post dated June 9. So where does this leave him? Alan Shipnuck's assessment is blunt. For Mickelson to return to the Professional Golfers Association Tour or its senior circuit, he would likely need to serve a suspension of at least a year and pay an enormous fine, and Shipnuck believes he is disinclined to do either. If LIV Golf collapses, a possibility raised by reports that the league is operating on loans, Shipnuck describes Mickelson as a man without a country, with nowhere left to play. The exemption math is just as unforgiving. He holds lifetime invitations to the Masters Tournament and the Professional Golfers Association Championship as a past champion, but his United States Open exemption has expired, and the Royal and Ancient Golf Club's rule exempting past champions only until age 55 has now passed him by at age 56. What remains are open questions. Whether Ashley Perez's attorney follows through on his warning, whether more accusers come forward now that one has gone on the record. Whether Phil Mickelson ever addresses any of it in his own voice rather than through attorneys and spokespeople. What is on the record right now is a set of serious allegations, a set of forceful denials, an admission that some mistakes have already been acknowledged, and a recorded apology that one woman kept for more than a decade. The disputed claims and the owned ones now sit side by side, and every viewer will have to weigh them. The one thing nobody disputes is this: the family man image that took 30 years to build came apart in a single summer, and the woman whose silence once protected it is now the name everyone is watching.